千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Daodejing by Lao Zi. So with the first section, you recall that we made a distinction between ancient times and modern times. The Tao as a travel metaphor works equally well in ancient times as well as modern times. Either way, we're talking about the Tao as the proven path, either a path that's been walked on in previous generations, as you see on the left, so that it becomes a natural path for walking for all future generations, or in modern times, a paved road that is easy to drive on. So the proven path is simple and easy to travel. The ancients are the travelers who went before us. They left us the Daodejing, which becomes like a map that gives us directions. It also tells us how to figure out if we're on the right path or not. So in ancient times, this would be landmarks. If you see this or this, you're on the right path. If you don't, you're on the wrong path. In modern times, the metaphor continues. It will be like road signs. There may be a sign that says, wrong way, do not enter. There may be signs that point to a destination that you don't want to reach. Perhaps the destination has to do with some of the unsavory things in life. Discord, contention, violence, all that. And that is your indicator that it's time to take the off-ramp to get back on the right path and then continue on your way to your intended destination. So as I mentioned, Lao Tzu wanted to use a whole bunch of examples to illustrate these signs, these landmarks, these indicators that you're on the right path or the wrong path. And that is what we got into in the second section. The signs that you're headed in a wrong direction, like the wrong way street sign, the do not enter sign, if you're going down a one-way street opposite to traffic. Now, when Lao Tzu wrote the Daodejing, he used the metaphor that was easy and immediate to the ancient people. That is, how a kingdom functions, how the ruling of a kingdom from the top down would affect all subjects of the kingdom, and therefore the agricultural production. And the agricultural production was nothing less than the lifeline of the kingdom. And looking at this particular slide, the corruption of the courts, resulting in the fields being barren, the warehouses being empty, we can easily see how that would correspond to our lives today. So the corruption of the rulers would correspond to the Tao being missing from our lives. And one way to tell that is the case would be, for instance, if you find yourself functioning far below your potential. And functioning below your potential would be analogous to the fields being barren. You're not really doing what you could be doing. You're not doing as well as you thought you would. And therefore, the warehouse being empty, that corresponds to this feeling of emptiness in your life. This unfulfilled emptiness gnawing at you. This void that is not actually a good thing. It is not the emptiness in your environment that reduces the clutter. and liberates you. Rather, it's an emptiness in your heart, making you feel like there's got to be more to life. Now, of course, people tend to be somewhere between the extremes. What I mean by that is most people are somewhere between living up to their full potential, moving full speed ahead, having a great time, and the other extreme being a complete failure to do so. Most people are somewhere in between. So when that is the case, you can think of it as like a half-empty warehouse. The warehouse is not completely full. You're not enjoying prosperity. It is also not completely empty. It's not that bad. It's somewhere in between, but it's a negative sign without a doubt. If what you store in your warehouse is getting used up faster, then it can be replenished. And if you notice that in your life, then Tao cultivation will be the way to turn that around. That is, get your life to the point where your inner warehouse is starting to fill up and what it stores is increasing over time. So the usefulness of this metaphor cannot be understated. Now, Lao Zi has more to say about that. I have the arrows in this particular slide because Lao Tzu is pointing out there's a cause and effect relationship between one and the next. That if there's corruption and chaos, it's going to lead to a lack of production, that's going to lead to emptiness, etc. Then what Lao Tzu does is that he zeroes in on the corruption, the Tao being missing, and then talk about the various signs of that. Again, using the same metaphor of the ancient kingdom. And that's our other summary slide. And, I label it as the wrong path, 2 of 2, because it follows the previous one, which was the wrong path, 1 of 2. So in this particular one, we're basically lining up the original Chinese with the translation, with the ancient metaphor and modern application. So this is zooming in on the ruling elites, the court of corruption, when the rulers exhibit the negative traits that lead the kingdom to ruin. So these are all things that we can check in our lives to see if we ourselves are heading down the path of personal ruin. This starts out with a metaphor of the rulers wearing fineries. It just means a false front. So that means if you are more concerned about your image than your actuality, the reality of your situation, well, that's a red flag. Then we get to the metaphor of the sharp sword. That is, if you are defensive, if you are dismissive of bullying, intimidating against other people, as if you carry a sharp sword, like the ancients, well, that will be another red flag. Then we get into overconsumption, overindulgence. That's the third one there. That will be a negative sign for you as well. And then lastly, related to the fourth one is related to the third one. So instead of overconsumption, overindulgence, we have hoarding. We have accumulating excessive stuff, material things that don't really help you. They just clutter things up. And this can also represent pretending that everything is going well, like the ancient rulers, living it up while the people suffer, meaning that you have that empty void that's gnawing at you. So that will be the last negative sign. So with all these, with the 2 slides, the wrong path 1 and 2, we have 7 indicators of 7 signs if you will, that were driving down the wrong street, so to speak, walking on the wrong path. So by contrast, we can figure out what Lao Tzu would consider to be the right path just by reversing on these examples and then applying those to our lives. So based on that, I want to extrapolate and share this particular slide with you. This slide shows what we can deduce in terms of the right path, moving down the right path in life, by looking at the reverse of what Lao Tzu is describing. So then, rather than to live a life with the Tao being absent, and therefore there's chaotic corruption, in the heart of your spirituality, if instead you can live life with orderly harmony rather than chaotic corruption, that would be a very good indicator that you are on the right path. Number two, if you are keeping busy in your life with productive, meaningful, and fulfilling work, that will be another good sign. If you are just going through the motions day to day, you hate your work, that would not be a good sign. Ideally, we can all be engaged in productive work that is meaningful, sustaining, and that fulfills a deep need within us to contribute to the world, to be of service to the world. And this can come in many different forms. There's so many different jobs that we can do. So keep this in mind. This is speaking to the right kind of work, the right kind of career. We're going to see this concept again in the next slide. Then, there's also receiving bountiful harvest. This is the opposite to the empty warehouse. This means enjoying abundance and prosperity, that there's always more than you actually need. You can put things away, save them for a rainy day. That's a good thing. That's a good sign that you're on the right path. So 1, 2, 3 would be the counter to the first 3 signs of being on the wrong path that we talked about. So we got 4 more, basically. Number 4, being genuine and authentic instead of superficial and flashy. This is the counter, this is the opposite or the reverse to the metaphor of the officials wearing fineries. Putting up a good-looking front when in fact there's corruption in the courts. So if you are true and genuine and real and down to earth, that is being on the right path. Number 5, treating others well, getting along with everyone, as opposed to becoming very defensive, very intimidating, trying to dominate other people. To get along with other people, treating everyone, getting together in peace and harmony, a very good sign. So all of us in this gathering, we're actually a good sign. Doing what we're doing now in peace and harmony is a positive sign in all of our lives. Then there's enjoying the pleasures of life in moderation. So this is counter to the overindulgence, the overconsumption that we were just talking about. In the Tao, it is all about enjoying the good life. But Tao sages will be the first to say that if you overdo it, you actually cut yourself short. You actually end up with not as much as you could have. If you go about it with moderation, make it last. So then, number 7, sharing resources in the spirit of compassion. This is counter to the final metaphor, the final example where Lao Zi says that the corrupt officials, corrupt rulers, accumulate way more resources than they need. They hoard them rather than to share them. So this is the opposite of that. So these 7 indicators would be what Lao Zi would point to, letting us figure it out on our own by looking at the opposite. So now you may be wondering, what is this stated explicitly anywhere in the Daodejing? Well, this chapter is it. This chapter is the explicit statement. Now remember, in the Tao, the expectation on all of us is that we gotta do the work. We gotta pick up the slack, do the work for ourselves. We gotta discover some of these ideas, these concepts for our own use. It's not all spelled out for us. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us all travel safely so we can meet again. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.